back, guys. This is a video response to one of the people who watch my videos who left a comment asking me about basing, and I just wanted to go ahead and show you a lot of the techniques I use for basing and sort of the evolution I went through in the process. I've spent a lot of time working on basing because I think one of the greatest things that makes two well painted models stand out from each other, which frankly when you get to a certain point, that really comes down to it, is what makes it stand out is a complementary basing. So I want to start off with some of my older miniatures and work more to present. I'm going to sort of do this quickly and just generally talk about things. This is actually a mid to long range, long time ago, probably 7-8 years ago. This is a giant I did for an RPG game, as you can imagine. The actual miniature itself does not come on a base like this. The base itself is only like right through here. It's a very small base. However, this is a floor tile. It's a little 2" by 2" floor tile, and it makes a really nice base for a large model. And for some of my giant size models and that type of stuff, that's the type of stuff I did. Now you notice right through here it's got different really rugged texture. Well, what that is this is basically just sand and white Elmer's glue, and as it got started to dry, I started to tease it and started to push it in directions and pull it in directions, and then I just painted it up to look like beat up, torn up grass, and it actually dried that way. When it gets tacky, you can start to do stuff like that. So this is one of the things I did early on. Another thing I did early on was when I was painting this water elemental. It's a little dusty, sorry. I basically put a layer of Elmer's glue down, which dries clear by the way, and then I put some paint down, and then I put a layer of Elmer's glue down, and I put a layer of paint down. And it sort of gives a three-dimensional look to the base with greens and blues. So it looks like, because the Elmer's glue purposely was not laid evenly, it was laid with ripples and lows and highs. So when I put really watered down green in there, it sort of pooled into these areas. And when I put a layer of glue over it again, you can't tell where one layer begins and where the next layer ends. There's about 3 or 4 layers there. And then yes, I did go over this with water effects from the scenic stuff. I like that stuff too. Some of the stuff you do doesn't exactly work. This was a miniature, it's called a Growler, from a game called Vor. I enjoyed the miniature, enjoyed the game. Fortunately, it went away. I guess they're coming out with second edition eventually, maybe, is what they're talking about. Anyways, here I was using all sorts of stuff. I have bits from like you'd put on a car to stuff I pulled out of a stereo. This guy is supposed to be living in a junkyard. It kind of made sense. It was just too much. That one I probably did closer to 11 years ago though. Here's a resin base. Some of these bases are nice. I think they look too predictable. When you can look at a base and say, oh, you got that base from such and such company. That's part of the such and such series. That kind of takes a lot out of the base to me. Now, I couldn't tell you what company this is. But once again, futuristic cybernetic zombies, you know. If you ever seen my, any of the stuff with my Cricks, you understand why I got that. Now, the technique I used, actually before I go to that, the technique I used with my ogres, let me show you a couple other things. Here's one of my Cricks models. I was just speaking about Cricks. This here is nothing more than just pebbles. I put pebbles down on top of pebbles on top of pebbles, and I basically was going for an extremely rocky feel. And I think it does a pretty good job of it. It's very quick. Once again, you're letting how you put things on be the example. This is an old miniature from the Tyranids from the 40K. It's an old metal Hormigaunt. This here is nothing more than the Games Workshop sand put down, and then I ink it with sort of a reddish brown. Different than the Vermin brown, which is more of an orange brown. This actually doesn't exist anymore. There's a wash called Chestnut. So I have to basically remake my Chestnut wash. But if you ever seen any of my old school NIDs, that's what they look like prior. The new school MIDs I'm eventually going to get around doing are extremely heavily covered in cork. And you can see here I'm basically building up and filling in gaps. And what I'm filling in the gaps with, right through here, the white stuff you see, that stuff is sealing caulk for like bathrooms. And that's C-A-U-L-K on that. And you basically put it in there. You can texture it as you put it in there. It textures itself pretty easily if you don't smooth it out. And this is a heavily done. It's going to be for a Trigon. You can buy it in great big sheets like this. I think I bought 4 sheets for like $15 or something like that from Michaels or from Hobby Lobby. And you can go a long ways. Now, speaking of Hobby Lobby, when you go there, get this. This was like $8. I've used this for nearly 5 years. And I haven't done huge amounts of it. I usually put small bits here and there, but yeah. Now, someone was asking me how I did my ogre bases. Basically, I use a bit of the cardboard and I use the sealing caulk, and I stipple the sealing caulk on. Stippling is a technique where you stab it, basically. You get a big wide brush and you just stab. And you stab. And sometimes I move it left to right, like there's been boot tracks or whatever. And it creates a real thin but three-dimensional raise to the actual soil. And then you go through that with layers of inks and washes and a base color. In this case, I do Vermin Brown followed by Bad Dab Black on my ogre bases. Sometimes I go over it with Devian Mud if I'm trying to get a little richer color. Here's how it looks before you put the Bad Dab on it. That's a Fortress Gray. Yeah. And it's very thinly put on so you can see the textures. If I was trying to do this to a higher scale, I wouldn't just try and break it into a cool pattern. I would then take the patterns I broke off and then break them down even smaller so it's like pebbles, and I would put it up and around it so it looked like it was not so rigid. But frankly, when I built my ogre army, I was trying to build it very quickly, and I've tried to keep the same type of painting throughout the rest of my army, even though I'm taking a little more time with the other models. Here's what that is actually looking like, if you're wondering. This is a ogre champion. All my champions are on rocks. And you can sort of get a feel for it. Here's another miniature I want to show you that uses the sealing caulk for bathrooms and whatnot. And it's done in a different way. You can see right here, there's the actual texture of it. Get this where it's got the light. There you go. And that's another example of how I do it. Some of the other stuff I use is stuff like the sheetrock all-purpose compound. I use that to build up specific areas. It's lightweight when it dries. Another thing I use, I put in this Tupperware bag. You can get this from Michaels or Hobby Lobby too. Basically, you get bush block, so they call it shrubbery, and you can break it down into as small of pieces as you need. And then I use that for actual three-dimensional shrubs on the bases. And I want to get one of my Chaos Space Marines so you can see what I'm talking about. One second. Alright, here's a Chaos Space Marine. This is also another use of that sealing caulk for the, but I really can't get the lighting right on that. Put my finger away. I don't know how that's coming out. But I do it with all sorts of models. It's one of the techniques that I saw sort of being done differently, and I found a better way of doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There's a lot more I can talk about this. I'll probably do a second video at some point. But I wanted to go ahead and do this video for the gentleman who asked me about how I did my basing. If you guys haven't subscribed, please do. If you like it, please like it. And favorite if you want to watch it again. Have a great day. Bye.